What's up guys and welcome to What If Issei was in Aincrad part 6. I am gonna make a bigger video this time to cover the rest of this arc, so as usual if you wanna follow along the link is in the description. I hope you like the vid and if you do please leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. Now without further ado let's get along with the video. Chapter 6, Floor 11 Part 3. The secret of the NPCs. Kiba was amazed at how synchronized they were, having met no less than an hour ago. Without any sort of signals, all three of them dashed at the NPC named Thanrin. Kirito held his sword above his head and headed straight for him. Asuna zoomed in from the right and Kiba prepared to land a backhand blow from the left. Asuna reached Thanrin first, Kirito close behind and Kiba, to his disappointment, just a step behind. He was sure that at least one of them should be able to land a hit on the NPC, creating a chance for the others. However, Thanrin thrust his sword forward directly at Kirito's descending blade. An extremely loud clang echoed in the cavern as the impact stopped Kirito dead in his tracks. Two things occurred simultaneously after that. Seemingly unfazed by the impact himself, Thanrin swept his blade to the side, parrying Kiba's attack, while at the same time kicking up the wide scabbard that lay at his feet, blocking Asuna's machine gun-like jabs while holding it in his left hand. The second we stopped attacking he let go of the scabbard, grabbed the hilt and spun anti-clockwise with both swords held out. There was the sound of sliding metal as the second sword left the scabbard, which flew straight at Asuna, who had jumped back with the rest of us to avoid the attack. Hastily swinging her rapier, she barely managed to repel the scabbard back at him. Kirito launched another attack as the scabbard was flying back at Thanrin. The blade in Thanrin's left hand came up to meet the Queen's Nightsword, and somehow caught it and snapped it out of his hands. The glinting blade in Thanrin's right hand swung around at Kirito, momentarily unarmed. Kiba rushed in and blocked the strike, and this time he felt the impact reverberating throughout his body. That was a strong one, he thought, glancing at his HP bar. Sure enough, a tiny fraction of his HP had been chipped off. Thanrin stabbed the other sword at the scabbard flying through the air, and somehow resheathed it just like that. Kiba tried striking Thanrin a few more times, all of which he parried or countered, and after receiving a glancing hit that chipped off another chunk of his HP, he jumped back and regrouped with Kirito and Asuna, the former once again armed. Thanrin did not move from where he was and only took up a stance once again, dropping the second sword back at his feet. That is insane, Kirito commented. Kiba had to agree with that sentiment. 3-on-1, and it was them who had barely gotten out without much damage. Any stupid yet feasible plans, Kirito-kun? Asuna asked. How does she have the time to snark even now? Kiba wondered. Actually, yes, but not a stupid one. Kirito turned to Kiba. This depends on you. We're going to be using your reluctance to use sword skills to beat this guy. Elaborate please, Kirito-kun, Kiba said, confused. Asuna and I will take turns attacking him with sword skill after sword skill. During the delay after a skill is ended, you defend the person who's frozen while the other one of us attacks. Given the situation that both of us are immobile, it'll be up to you to keep him at bay while we recover. Asuna looked at him, feigning immense surprise. Would you look at that, you do have a proper planning sense. Oh, shut up. Wait, Kiba said. I'll attack first and make an opening, then we go with your plan. Oi, you want to do this alone, without sword skills? Kiba smirked. Up until now, we've been fighting massive monsters, and not many human-like opponents. In cases like these, if too many people attack at once, they can easily be a hindrance to each other. One person is not enough to handle a boss-level NPC, Asuna countered. Maybe, Kiba replied, but we don't know till we try. Of course, he had a different reason for wanting to attack alone. All the way here, Kiba had felt like the LVP of the party. He was the Knight of Raya's Greenery, yet he was the player falling behind the others. He was supposed to be the best when it came to speed and swords, yet he was being beaten by not just one of them, but both Asuna and Kirito. Also, this was the first time he was facing a human-like, powerful opponent. This was where his training should help him, his training in spars with his master. He had experience fighting people who actually used a sword, and not monsters that fought wildly. At least, that was what he wanted to believe. He didn't want to tell himself that he was simply lacking, which was why he decided to fight Thanarin by himself. He had nothing to prove to anyone but himself. Kiba didn't wait for a response from either Asuna or Kirito, and charged straight at Thanarin. Swords clashed and Kiba's greatest battle yet in Aincrad began. B-blades cut through the air and met with a clash. Sparks flew and metal sang as two individuals fought in the depths of the dungeon. One fought due to the commands of the system, the orders laid down by Cardinal. The other fought a battle against himself, to prove his own strength to no one but himself. Kiba Yato, Knight of Raya's Greenery, and student of Akatsuji, survivor of the Holy Sword Project and avenger of those who died in it. Thanarin the Warrior, an individual ordered by Cardinal to follow a fixed set of actions. Two swords wielded by two individuals. Two silver blurs whirring through the air. Faster. Kiba knew he could do better. He had to do better. He was the Knight of Raya's Greenery. He would not be defeated. Faster. Attacks were made, attacks were parried, attacks were countered. With increasing speed, Kiba tried to land the decisive blow. Bit by bit, it was Kiba's HP that dropped. Even faster. One would win. One would lose. One had nothing to gain. The other had everything to lose. Swords clashed and spun, as both tried to outdo the other. As Kiba brought his sword down for another strike, Thanarin's programming caused him to make a mistake. He was in the middle of an attack, and Kiba had chosen that exact moment when the set function changed from stop attacking to block if countered to continue attacking. As a result, Kiba managed to land a near clean hit on him after rebounding his sword off of Thanarin's. He then noticed how much the HP dropped, so he has low HP as well. If I can make a solid opening, Kirito-kun and Asuna-san can finish him off with a sword skill each. In that case, he had a tiny opening that he could use, and so he decided to, for the first time, use the system. He twisted around the sword that was at his lower left after the last strike, and began his attack. Kiba always went out of his way to avoid using sword skills. However, for certain skills like the single-hit horizontal, vertical and slant, this proved difficult as they were all basic motions. Until he found a loophole. Sword skills were activated by initiating a set of motions with a certain position. For example, horizontal could be started by putting the right foot forward and bring the sword to the left before slashing it, or vice versa. However, there was a loophole that was easy to exploit once you knew what it was. No matter how many times you used sword skills, the motions each time were 100% similar, be it the positioning of the feet, or the angle at which the arm stuck out, they were all alike. Therefore, he could avoid accidentally activating them by shifting his foot at the start one step or so. Doing so, he could avoid entering the initial positions, which were usually stances that the human brain found common, and by entering into the slightly unorthodox positions, he could always avoid activating a sword skill. This time, however, he decided to follow the orthodox movement pattern. The sword glowed a vibrant yellow, and slant cut straight through Thanarin's defense, knocking him back. Now, Kiba yelled. Two hurricanes of opposite colors blew past him. A white whirlwind released 5 blue laser-like strikes that seemed near simultaneous, and then a jet engine-like roar was emitted by the black blur, and a sword glowing an ominous red-black pierced straight through Thanarin. The HP bar plummeted to the red zone, and stopped with about a tenth of the HP left. Crap, we're all frozen. However, Thanarin did not strike back. Instead he pulled back and then dropped his fighting stance. Impressive, he said. To think you could damage me this much. Very well, I shall give you the magma lantern. The three of them could only stand dumbfounded after that declaration. Eh? Left Kirito's lips. That's it? We don't have to completely beat him, Asuna asked. Hey, how would I know? I didn't fight him the first time. I wasn't asking you, Kirito-kun. You have proved your strength. You have proved yourself strong enough to face this floor's guardian. Therefore, I shall grant you the lantern so you may open the path to the next floor. Thanarin clarified. Oh, well, that's fine then, Kirito said. I'd have liked to defeat him completely though. You and your battle mania, Asuna said, exasperated. Kiba too, wanted a complete victory. Or, if it had been possible, he would have preferred to finish off Thanarin by himself. Anyway, let's not waste any more time here, Asuna said. Let's hurry and get that lantern back to the inner area. She walked up to the lantern behind Thanrin, who made no motion to stop her, and picked up the lantern. A quest complete sign appeared in Kiba's vision, which the other members of the party also certainly saw. Asuna and Kirito headed back towards the cavern's entrance, and then Kirito paused. "Oi, Kiba, aren't you coming? I'll be there soon, don't wait for me." "Alright then." With that, he and Asuna left. Kiba sighed. He did not like being the weaker swordsman. He did not like losing in something that was his forte. It happened when he decided to leave and turned towards the entrance. "Wait, young devil," a voice said. Only two people were in that cavern. One was a player who was also a devil. Another was merely an NPC governed by the system. Someone whose instruction routine should not have included a statement like that. However, it could not have been any other person. Kiba turned to stare in shock at the NPC who had sat down on the cavern floor and was looking straight at him. Except, he now gave off a different feeling. It was as if he seemed more alive. No, there was a light in his eyes that wasn't there before. Thanrin grinned at his expression. "What, is it that surprising? You should have noticed by now. Or have you not been able to use your senses in here yet?" Kiba was speechless. Aren't you an NPC? "Well, according to this system, I certainly am." "Now come on, stop standing there and come here. I used up my one chance for this, so you better make it worth it." "What? I want to talk." "Boy, that crest on your armor, it's the Greenery crest, isn't it? I'm assuming that you're the servant of Lucifer's sister." Kiba did not know what to do or say. He merely stood in one place and stared at was NPC even the right term anymore? "Stop gawking like an idiot, boy, and sit down over here. You don't happen to have any beer in your inventory, do you?" Kiba regained his sense, but remained wary. "What are you?" Thanrin sighed. "Looks like I'll need to do some explaining first then. But first, give me any kind of food you might have with you. It might be fake, but it's been a long time since I had the taste of food in my mouth." Still a bit astounded by the sudden turn of events, Kiba brought out a coarse bread toast and threw it over to Thanrin. He caught it and began tearing into it. "So then," Kiba began, "start explaining." Thanrin finished the bread and looked back at him. "No need to be that cautious. I'm not planning anything suspicious. In fact, I probably won't be able to do so. Just sit down already." Realizing he wouldn't get any answers unless he complied, Kiba sighed and sat down. He then glared at the roughly dressed warrior and said, "Now talk." All right. Firstly, how much do you know about this game? This world called Aincrad. It's a revolutionary virtual reality console that lets the players experience the game technically with their own bodies. It was made by a human scientist named Kayaba Akihiko. That's where you're wrong. Kayaba is no human. Surprised, Kiba asked, "What, is he a devil then?" "Not exactly, number. Let's call him the result of a devil's experiment and leave it at that." "That's not the main point here. You sure you don't have any beer?" Irritated, Kiba brought out and threw him the elf nail of the third floor, uncorking it. Thanrin gulped it down at one go. "Ah, that's better." "Now where was I?" "Oh yes, anyway, Kayaba Akihiko, being no human, was skilled in manipulating both human and devil technology. The result, as you can see, is the fact that nobody was able to get you out of the game from outside." "You mean to say the nerve gear has defenses against demonic powers, against any sort of supernatural power?" "How, I don't know, but judging by the fact that all the non-humans who got trapped as players are still here, something effective." "As a matter of fact, I think about 10 or so died on the first day when the people around them tried various methods to break them free." "I understand, but that still does not explain who and what you are. Players aren't the only ones imprisoned in this game." Those words gave Kiba pause. On the day the game was launched, 10,000 players dove in using their devices. However, at the same time, there were 100 others who were imprisoned against their will without the use of the device. Or, at least, the same device the players are using. In technicality, and by the system's definition, I am an NPC, a non-player character. On the day of the launch, some sort of spell, or casting or the like transported 100 supernormal beings somewhere. Those beings included me. By the time I woke up, I was here in this cavern, and Kayaba's voice spoke to me. From his words, I realized he was talking to many people at once. He told us that we were imprisoned inside this virtual world that he had created, that we were part of a project of his. We were given the virtual bodies of NPCs and stuck in various locations. We had no freedom over our bodies. We could not move them. We could not speak. All we could do is look through their eyes and see an ever-changing scenery. Until you and those two came along, I had spent this entire time forcing myself to stay sane while constantly looking at this one blasted sword and feeling my body sharpen it one damn hour after another. There were exactly 100 of us, he told us, one on each floor. I did not want to imagine what kind of similar torture the other 99 of us are going through. Wait a minute, Kiba said finally, suspicion creeping into his voice. You said you were trapped in those bodies, unable to do anything. So how are you speaking to me right now? You didn't let me finish. Quite the suspicious one, aren't you? Fanrin said wryly. The last thing Kayaba told us was that while we could not do anything, we were provided with one chance. That is, of all the time that we may spend trapped here, we may regain control of ourselves just once for any one purpose. Of course, he did prevent us from making any of those purposes, clearing the game or the like. I just used up mine right now, by the way, to speak to you. Why, you're a devil. Yes, and not just any devil, but the servant of Amao's sister. I'm going to ask you to aid us, to help the players as much as you can to clear this game. Kiba frowned at those words. I will, but please do not expect too much of me. It appears my skills are lacking, so much so that I am falling behind others, other normal people. You're a knight piece, yes? Fanrin asked. Kiba nodded. Well, there's nothing wrong with not being the best, and you shouldn't be comparing yourselves to them of all people. Wait, them? I thought only one you already seemed to know, and the other seems to be Kayaba's favorite plaything in this world. He speaks to us sometimes, never answers any questions, but occasionally tells us about a fragment of his plans. I think that boy will be given that right after this floor. That? Just a little edge. Regardless, instead of comparing yourself to others, look first at the shackles you've imposed upon yourself. What are you talking about? Kiba asked. I'm talking about your reluctance to use sword skills. Boy, Kiba couldn't help but flinch slightly. He had considered using them at times, but never had until the battle with Fanrin. I don't want to rely on the system, he said, speaking as though it was a memorized script. I want to clear this game with my own skill. Oh, come on, you don't believe that yourself? Fanrin said. Kiba hesitated, and then retorted, if I don't use my own skills to beat this game, I won't have improved at all once I get out. I will have to go back empty-handed, and I cannot leave without having gained something here. Knight of Greenery, listen to me, Fanrin said, putting on a serious expression. Is your master the kind of person who would care whether or not you've improved yourself in your time here? Because I don't think any member of the Greenery family would place that above their servants returning safely to them. Kiba bit his lip. He knew Fanrin was right, but he couldn't accept the fact that he would spend an unknown length of time without having improved himself at all. He met Fanrin's gaze with a sharp glare. I have a goal I wish to reach, and for that I need to get stronger. I cannot waste my time here without improving my skills in the slightest. Is it revenge you are after? Kiba stopped. How did he know that? That glare in your eyes clearly speaks of whatever hatred is fueling your purpose. If it's revenge you're after, then do you have the time to spend satisfying your pride? Fanrin's words put a pressure on Kiba's heart. I don't have any place to speak about whatever hatred is fueling you, but if it's vengeance you want for whatever reason, do you really have the time or energy to waste trying to hold up your pride? Putting that aside, revenge isn't a very healthy reason to live. And like you said, Kiba replied, anger seeping into his voice, you don't have any place to speak about it. Alright, fine, but if you really want to get stronger, then why are you actively preventing yourself from doing so? There is no convenient system that guides my motions in real life. No, but there is your brain. Use sword skills. Use them again and again until your muscles remember each and every motion. And, once you are out of Aincrad, use your demonic powers to recreate those sword skills. By learning to use sword skills here, you can learn to utilize them in the real world. That is the one advantage you have by being a devil. Saying that, Fanrin got up, If you want to get stronger, you have to use every chance that you are given. Just remember one thing. Don't make it so that revenge is the only thing that drives you forwards. You don't have any right. What will you do afterwards? Then, what will you do once you have taken your revenge? Kiba found it somehow difficult to answer. I will. Think about that. Think about who it was that made you her servant. Think about your master, Rai's Grimory. Kiba could not answer. Why? Why can't I just say I will become my master's sword? I've lost count of how many days I have spent staring at myself sharpening this damned sword. Do you think I've never given a thought to what I would do to Kaiba should I ever find him? Do you think I've never had my own thoughts of revenge? He trapped us here, with zero freedom. Some of us don't even retain their own appearance and voice. A few of us may even be in a position where the players are supposed to fight and kill them. I don't even have a good bottle of beer to spend my time with. The last statement completely destroyed the tension that had built up. Whenever my thoughts went too dark, I remembered my wife and son that I left behind in the real world. Granted, I wouldn't ever get to see them anyway, but by remembering them, I realized I couldn't let myself be taken over by a temporary, empty purpose. I've been through where you are right now. I have once taken revenge on someone for a certain cause. What I felt afterwards was an absolute emptiness. Do not let yourself fall into that as well. Picking up the plain metal blade, he began to walk back to where he normally sat as an NPC. Overcome it, overcome that thirst for revenge, and find yourself a better reason to live. Use what the system offers to get stronger, but get stronger not for the sake of your revenge, but for the sake of your master. Thanrin turned around, sat down and picked up the sharpening stone. Now go, Knight of Grimory, defeat this world and return to your master. And with that, he began once again to sharpen his sword. The glow left his eyes and Kiba knew that he had gone back to his bodily prison. A single exclamation mark, however, still floated above his head. We finished the quest, so what else does Thanrin, no, the NPC have to offer? Kiba began to wonder whether he should find out the cause of the exclamation mark, or simply walk back towards the inner area. After a while, he made his decision. Chapter 7, Floor 11 Part 4, The Eruption of the Spire. You've got to be kidding me, the player with the bandana groaned. Kiba had just made it back to the inner area of the 11th floor to meet up with Kirito and Asuna, who had finished telling the other clearers about the twist of the boss room. Hey, even I thought that spire was just a decoration, Klein, Kirito replied. But, come on, all this time and the boss room was literally right above our heads. That's a bit hard to swallow, Kirito. You seriously seem to have a habit of attracting the unusual, huh? Not only was it you who found where the damn boss was hiding, you even somehow managed to find and bring that rumored player here. At those words, all eyes turned to Kiba. He wondered why and how he had gotten this well known. I'm just lucky, I guess, Kirito said, chuckling. I don't think so, Beater, the spiky-haired player spoke up. It was obvious to Kiba that he, and quite a few others, detested Kirito for reasons he didn't know. Shut it, Kansai. The hell did you call me? Well, since your name's a bit too similar to Kiba here, Kirito said, jerking his thumb at Kiba, I decided to call you Kansai instead. Kansai evidently did not like the nickname, and Kiba didn't particularly like the fact that his own name was similar to whatever the arrogant player called himself. In any case, Asuna broke in, looking as though she was used to antics like these. We now know where the boss room is, so do we go now or do we just keep this item for longer? Now, Kiba thought, but did not voice it. After his talk with Thanrin, Kiba was left with a lot to think about. He told himself that getting revenge for his friends who died in that institute was why he wielded a sword. However, being stuck here he had no chance of doing so. He needed to get out. He could no longer stand at the side sharpening his blade while others battled to escape. It was high time that he put his own strength in the mix. And maybe, what he received from the NPC Thanrin, would help him even further. Hold it, Klein spoke up. None of us are prepared for whatever the boss might be. We should probably go and stock up first. And are you sure you don't want to send some scouts ahead first? I would have gladly agreed to that, but we don't know anything about this floor. We don't know any of the conditions surrounding the boss battle this time around. If we send someone now, and they use the lantern on what's up there. What happens next? Is it something that we can reset or redo? Do we even get more than one chance? We don't know any of that. This is still a MERP game, you know, Kirito said. We should get second chances, Kirito-kun. This isn't a game. Does it really adhere to all the rules that are given for other games? Kiba asked. That silenced Kirito, and made all the other players ponder as well. As the silence began to grow uncomfortable, Asuna spoke up. In any case, Klein-san's right. All of us should prepare, stock up on potions, get our weapons in top condition and then meet back here tomorrow. With that, the players dispersed, leaving behind the currently 3 strongest of Aincrad. Kiba sighed in relief. Are meetings always this exhausting? You bet, Kirito said. And that Kansai idiot didn't make as much of a fuss this time. Only because this time you weren't so much of an idiot, Asuna remarked. Kiba chuckled at how their conversations always managed to revert to that point. You two might make a great couple, he said. Almost instantly, the two of them froze up, and Asuna very deliberately moved her clenched fist away from Kirito and created some distance between them. This time Kiba laughed. On a different note, Kiba, Kirito said, why does that thing on your back look so familiar? I was wondering when they'd notice. How hard is it to spot? On Kiba's back was an unusually wide sheath with a blade hilt poking out, a very familiar sheath and hilt. You saw it only a while back, especially you, Asuna-san. I would have expected you to remember what you almost got impaled by. I had it under control, she retorted, glaring. But is that really it? Yes, this is Thanran's second sword. Wait, there was a secondary quest. Oh man, Kirito groaned. Not exactly a quest, more like he just gave away that weapon. Seriously? Damn it, I should have stayed a while longer. Kiba wondered what would have happened if he had. Would Thanran have stayed silent, or would he risk revealing himself to an ordinary human? He couldn't be sure. Let's not stay here any longer, Asuna said. We need to get ready for tomorrow, get some rest and maybe train a bit more. Yes, Leader-sama, Kirito said sarcastically. This time he got kicked. Bikuau Academy was no ordinary high school, mostly because its students were not all ordinary humans. Of course, there were other places all over the world where non-humans mingled with humans, but Kuau Academy was designed, beneath the surface at least, for development. Some students that the school was in charge was also in turn in charge of the school and its surroundings, except said students in charge were not exempt from school work, a subject on which the higher devil authorities turned a deaf ear to complaints and inwardly chuckled. Being such a school, even if it wasn't known to the general public, the atmosphere had an effect. The school offered quite the variety of facilities, but for first-year student Tri-As Creamery, none of those facilities could help ease the worry that had been eating away at her for the past 2 months. The Sword Art Online incident had sent both the human world and a part of the underworld into crisis. Neither side had any idea how to bring back the people imprisoned by the game, and even though she protested, wanting to stay near her captured servant, the higher-ups had decided that that did not matter. She needed to enter Kuau Academy and prepare herself as a territory owner. Akano entered with her, but Hiroki Jukonko was still too young, so she hadn't yet become a student of the school. However, she did stay at the Occult Research Club during the entirety of the school period. She still hadn't managed to open up to anyone and still remained mostly quiet. Creamery-san, are you listening? A voice said. Rai-Az looked up to meet the gaze of her stern teacher. You've been increasingly absent-minded over the past few days. Care to explain why? Sorry, sensei. Pay attention a bit more. Once the teacher turned back to the board, Rai-Az sighed, returning to her thoughts. 2 months, and there had been zero progress with trying to undo Kayaba Kihiko's schemes. Neither could anyone even begin to take a guess at his motives. What's more, there had been news of 100 beings of different mythologies and factions had also been trapped aside from the players. Or, at least, they had gone missing at around the same time, which led everyone to assume as such. The underworld was in a tense situation, since it was there that the perpetrator had originated. The thin balance between the 3 powers had also become shaky. At the moment, though, Rai-Az did not care about any of that. She simply wanted her servant, her family back. Creamery House prided on having the most affection for their servants, and Ryaz was no exception. She would give anything to keep her servants safe. The bell rang, and the teacher left after setting an assignment. Ryaz sighed once again, and laid her head on her desk. Excessive worry is not good for your health, Ryaz. She lifted her head to see her childhood friend Suna Sidri giving her the usual impassive stare, with just a hint of worry in her eyes. I'm alright, Suna. You don't look like you are. Wouldn't you agree, Akano? Ryaz's first servant, Himejima Akano, her queen and the other of her closest friends had also come up. So is right, Ryaz. Since there's nothing we can do, we need to just wait and believe in Yoto-kun's ability. But there has to be something we can do, she said a tinge loudly, attracting a couple of stares, ones that weren't already in their direction. That is, there isn't. The one person who may have any idea, Ajiku Beelzebub-sama, is under pressure not to do anything. It could have dire effects on the underworld. If those extra 100 hadn't been taken as well, then there may have been something. Ryaz sighed. Have they found your sister yet? For a second, Suna's calm mask broke and her worry surfaced. No, they're still looking. To imprison even on Sama with the other 99. How strong a being did Beelzebub-sama make him? Surge-sama said that it wasn't strength that was the factor. Akano said, in fact, I think we can count ourselves lucky that the madman didn't also trap him. The other powers, the fallen angels, may have been encouraged to wipe us out once and for all. Akano, Ryaz said, I know. They're standing peace, but there are likely to be extremists. Ryaz knew how much Akano hated the fallen angels, and how much that colored her view of them, but she knew Akano was right. There were always some who were not content with peace. Had her brother been taken, the underworld would have been greatly crippled and vulnerable to attack. So, all we can do is wait, is it? Ryaz asked, downcast. Unfortunately so. We wait, and we hope. The marble spire of the 11th floor was easily the largest thing the players had yet seen in Aincrad, aside from the mountainous scenery of the 2nd floor. Urbus, a giant, smooth pillar of white marble that extended high above the island of the inner area. It was the strange shape of it that was odd. As it rose, the spire widened, slowly thickening until the top, where it became as wide as, the clearers now realized, an average boss room. 46 clearers, the 45 survivors of the entrance to Ragnarok Island newcomer Kiba, entered the spire to see a stark contrast with its exterior. The walls were pitch black and featureless. Flames were lit at even spaces at the edges of the floor, providing a very dim light. Seeing this, Kirito whistled. Guess this floor has some sort of grudge against our vision. From the burn condition, to the dim lighting here, bet the next floor will be so brightly lit it's gonna be like stabbing our eyes. Nobody commented as everybody found that too easy to believe. In the center of the room was a black pillar that led up to the ceiling and beyond. A rough spiral staircase jutted out from it, which seemed to be the only way up. The party stopped at the bottom of the stairs. About 80% of them turned to Asuna. Asuna sighed, and said, alright, let's move. Issei-sama, Ryaz yelped. They were currently inside the club room of the Occult Research Club. Ryaz had entered to find Konko sleeping on a sofa and her brother, the Maou Lucifer, sitting at her seat, fiddling with a magazine of sorts. Oh, there you are, Ryaz, Surge said, noticing her enter. You know, humans are quite amazing in their creative ability. The stories they come up with, incredible. Wait a minute, Ryaz said, trying to keep up with the sudden situation. What are you doing here? Oh yes, there's something that we just recently found out. About the Sao incident. All her surprise at her brother's sudden arrival vanished. Akano, standing beside her, asked, what? Surge put down the magazine on the desk. You know how the devils who were trapped in the game had their bodies moved to locations separate from the humans? Yes. Which means that normally other devils don't particularly go near the ordinary humans. Issei-sama, what are you getting at? By coincidence, one devil entered one of the hospitals where they were keeping the human Sao players. And we found out something that happened to all the 10,000 players who entered, both human and non-human. The black pillar in the middle of the spire did not extend all the way to the ceiling of the top. In fact, there was no ceiling. It ended at the floor of the roof and, looking back down at it, The players could see that it was hollow. A faint red glow was visible right at the bottom. Kiba did not like the look of that. "Perhaps we should stay as far from the pillar as possible," agreed everyone. "Spread out towards the walls, tanks up front, forwards right behind, facing that at the north." "Kirito-kun," Asuna said, in a tone that stated that she would not be argued with, "you and Kiba-kun stay at the back for now with the spear users." "Got it." "And she says she doesn't like leading," Kirito muttered, as they took their positions. The cannon was massive, at least 20 feet in length, 2.5 feet wide, 5 feet high at the base and about 17 feet high from the roof to the tip. The base appeared to be fixed, with no room for movement. Right at the back, under a lever was a foot-high empty space, which was obviously for the magma lantern. The entire contraption shone golden, like a treasure out of Midas vaults. It almost gave off a tangible aura of power and royalty. Kiba wondered if it was the game making them feel that way. Asuna brought out the magma lantern and walked up to the cannon. Before placing it, she turned back to the others. "Everyone stay on your guard. We have no idea what's going to happen next." With that, she placed the lantern in the gap, and pulled down the lever. Almost instantly the lantern broke, not shattered. The casing of it suddenly exploded out, leaving the lava inside, which floated into a sphere. A second later, it went upwards into the cannon, which then began to hum. Carved outlines on the body of the cannon began to glow, seemingly filling up with magma. The glow began near the base and intensified progressively towards the mouth. In a matter of seconds the entirety of the lines glowed an intense yellow-orange and the cannon was now making a very audible noise. And then it fired, an earth-splitting boom. The entire spire shook from the blast which rocketed up at an angle, ridiculously fast. Looking up in the mere seconds before it hit, Kiba realized where it was headed. High on the cavern wall, a gigantic section of rock jutted out like a table standing on its narrow end. Below it was a ledge only slightly greater in length than the width of the giant rock, and it was colored a shade lighter than the rest of its surroundings. That was where the cannon shot struck. With another eardrum exploding boom it destroyed the ledge, and the humongous structure began to fall, breaking through a group of similarly light-colored rocks that overlapped on its upper edge. It did not fall straight down. Somehow, as though there was a hinge where the ledge once was, the gigantic stone fell at an angle, the upper side turning downwards, straight towards the spire, and straight towards the cannon. "Asuna, get back!" Kirito yelled. Recognizing the danger, she immediately dashed back to where the others stood, and not a moment too soon, the rock fell with improbable velocity, and landed like a meteor on top of the cannon. The resulting earthquake knocked half the players off their feet. Kiba had jumped up the moment it touched the ground, so he remained standing. The section of the roof where the cannon once stood completely broke off from the spire and fell into the magma moat that lined the island. The splash of lava burned many players who were standing near it, but thanks to being in the inner area, they did not take any damage. Once the dust had cleared, Kiba looked to where the rock had fallen. The gigantic slab of rock now had one edge balancing on top of the marble spire, while what was once its lower edge remained where it was. The surface on top was like an extremely crude staircase, which meant that that was their way up. There was absolute silence as all this was digested. Finally Klein spoke up. "That's the way up, right? So, where's the boss?" "I got it," Kibao shouted. This floor was already unbelievably dangerous, right? And there was already that NPC that Beater fought, who apparently was on the level of a field boss. So, maybe, since this floor was so dangerous, there isn't a boss. "Are you hearing yourself, Cactus Head?" Kirito said. "There's gotta be a boss here. We should be careful where we shut it, Beater. Listening to you is just gonna get more of us killed." With that, before anyone else could say another word, he walked quickly towards the makeshift stairs. As soon as he neared the hole under which the black pillar was, the spire shook, and everyone including him froze. A few seconds later it shook again. A dim glow began to emanate from the hole, brightening every second. The spire was by then trembling constantly. At the edge of Kiba's hearing, there was a gradually increasing roar, one that increased at the same pace as the glow of what was inside the black pillar. "Oh, shit," Kirito yelled. Move back now." A volcanic eruption occurred that instant. Within seconds, the entire layout of the roof of the spire, Kiba didn't know why it was spire instead of tower, had changed drastically. Even the atmosphere had been altered, the smell of sulfur that he had gotten used to vanished. Also, it appeared that whatever mysterious light source had been illuminating the third floor had gone out, leaving only the glow of all the lava. The BGM changed and Kiba knew before he looked that whatever was behind the massive smoke cloud was their final opponent for this floor. Then a roar came from inside the cloud, blowing it away, leaving what had happened visible for everyone to see. In the newly darkened cavern of Ragnarok Isle, the roof of the marble spire now glowed with a pool of lava. Smaller streams flowed away from that pool towards the edge of the spire, spilling over it. Here and there, like in the rivers below, floated large stepping stone-like pieces of debris, and in the center of that pool was the boss. It was humanoid in build. The lower body was invisible beneath the magma, but the upper body was a mass of dark brown, hard muscle, large arms with powerful-looking fists, which unclenched every now and then to reveal the gray-brown nails. Its head was reptilian, resembling a tyrannosaurus but with a snout half the length. Fire flickered between semi-grinning jaws and its eyes glowed a furious yellow. A name and a cursor appeared above its head. Trijitter, the Volcano Lord. Trijitter roared once again, and finally 3 HP bars appeared. It was not nearly as complex in its monstrosity as the previous 10 bosses, but there was something about its simplicity that made it seem so much more dangerous. What the hell is that? Klein yelled. No time to figure out what it is. We need to focus on how to kill it. Kirito yelled back. Hey, Kibao! A third voice yelled. Red damage marks covered Kibao's body. He had jumped back just a second too late. Or maybe he was far too lucky, as he had the tiniest fraction of his HP remaining. However, it seemed that he couldn't stand. It wasn't a paralysis condition, Kiba realized. It was more the shock of suddenly being within reach of death's scythe. Leave him, Asuna ordered. You and you. Move him to the back and give him a few potions. Tanks move to the front, and rotate in groups of 3. One forward move with each group. Test out its attack patterns before we Asuna. Kirito yelled. What? That's not gonna work. Look at the area around the boss. She looked and paled. The boss was right in the middle of the pool, and the only way to reach it was debris that floated in rough circles around it. Debris big enough for only one player to stand on each, some of which were spaced far enough that only the forwards with good Agya could jump across. TCH. Alright, new plan. Forwards and spear users. The boss battle had not finished dealing out its surprises. Hands shot out of the lava at the edges of the pool, and monsters slowly climbed out. One by one, they got out and drew their weapons. Ragnarok Isle high-level mob Lavalik, legs made of thick red-gray stone, a torso of thin and somehow translucent rock that glowed with magma inside, skeletal arms of polished bone and a blazing skull of carbon black bone for a head. Streams of lava flowed through the bone of the arms, and each had a stone sword which looked like debris of a broken building. You've gotta be kidding me, Kirito groaned. Those were only found in one tiny area of this floor, and now they're the boss's minions? Kirito-kun, you, Striker-san and Klein-san get to the boss, Asuna began, resolution clear in her voice. The other forwards, the half on the left, go with 7 tanks and fight through to the edge of the pool. Direct the boss's attention away while Kirito and the others attack. 4 spear users go with 4 more tanks and stop any other Lavalik from climbing out of the lava. The Lavalik raised their weapons and uttered a grating cry, like sharp combs on the table's edge. Kiba unclasped the sheath from his back and held it in his left hand, right hand on the hilt, preparing for battle. The remaining forwards, 7 of you take the chance to strike when the boss flinches from the 3 attackers' strikes. Asuna continued, speaking hurriedly. The 2 of you with Kibao stay there and guard him. Kiba-kun and the others, take care of the Lavaliks. With that, she drew her rapier in one fluid motion and charged to meet the oncoming horde. 45 more players followed behind, Kirito and Kiba dashing forward. The boss roared and a battle cry replied, K.O.R.G. Chapter 8, Floor 11 Part 5. The Battle of the Spire. At this moment in time, various different mayhems were occurring in various places. In the underworld, there was widespread panic, as the list of devils imprisoned in Aincrad had been leaked to the public. On Mount Olympus, an argument between gods escalated, saturating the air with uncontrolled power. On Aincrad, a disagreement progressed as the head god tried to convince the dissenters to go along with his project on Drizzle. In Kyoto, valuable cargo had finally arrived and was met with a battle. On the 5th floor of Aincrad, two players struggled desperately against a raging river, trying to escape smashing into boulders. And on the 11th floor of Aincrad, Ragnarok Isle, nearly 50 players met the charge of their greatest battle yet. For now, let us look only at the chaos that ensued on top of a pillar of white marble. The people around Kiba were no longer mere players. Months of experience fighting for their lives had molded them into survivors. Yet even as survivors, they would have been eradicated and have never cleared the castle of steel any more than 10 floors, if not for 3 swordsmen, Kirito, Kiba, and Klein. However, that too may not have been possible without the guidance of their unofficial leader. Kiba slashed at the neck of the Lavalic in front of him, decapitating it. The main body stumbled back, and resumed its attack, leading to him having to parry the heavy stone sword. Taking his right hand off the sword, he twisted his body around and slid his sword off the stone weapon's side, and followed up with a diagonal slash that cut the body in half. The glow within the torso glimmered out, and head and body scattered into polygons. Truly, if not for Asuna-san's commands, we would have needed to use up just about all our potions. At the start of the battle, Asuna was the one leading the charge against the horde of Lavalic. As the two sides clashed, she zipped through the mob, dodging every attack with an extraordinary finesse, and clearing them all, jumped and stabbed the boss in the throat dash, just in time to counter its fire-breath attack before it wreaked havoc among the players. Despite not being a beta tester, she had recognized the signs. She had seen it begin to inhale, and had aimed at the critical spot right on time. Having done so, Asuna had moved to the rear, leaving the boss to Kirito, Klein and Striker, and had joined Kiba in taking down the minion mobs. And what followed next was an overwhelming upper hand over the Treejuller and the Lavalic. As she and Kiba took down most of the Lavalic, it seemed to be a characteristic of this floor that all the monsters had high attack but low HP. She shouted orders that nobody questioned, orders that would turn out to be exactly what was necessary. Tanks and spear users lined the pool, stabbing any rising mob straight through the skull. Any that managed to survive and rise up from the pool were barricaded by the massive shields. The big man, Agil and other axe wielders, chopped them down where they stood, before they dealt any more than nearly insignificant damage to the tanks. The forwards were divided into 3 groups, 2 that dealt with the Lavalic groups, and 1 that paired with the remaining tanks to attack the boss whenever it moved just close enough. Whenever a player's HP hit the danger zone, Asuna knew. She calculated as she fought, noting the amount of damage the mobs were capable of dealing, where the critical points were, and making calculated guesses on how much damage a player had suffered. She was constantly keeping an eye on nearly everyone else, making decisions on whom to withdraw when. Every decision thus far had been right on time, and not a single potion was ill-spent. It was inhuman, her level of perception, and her ability to multitask. It should have been impossible for her to strategize while simultaneously fighting to survive her own skirmishes. Yet she was doing so with astonishing efficiency. When a player was in danger, she sent over just the right number of tanks and forwards to extricate him and allow him time to heal. At the same time, Kibao and the 2 players tasked to guard him as he healed were always inexplicably out of harm's way. When Kiba realized why, he was absolutely amazed. Every fight, every skirmish on the field, their positions are being manipulated and directed in order to keep the injured out of the line of fire. Asuna-san, you are absolutely amazing. Tanks moved as ordered to just the right places to intercept incoming attacks. Forwards moved from battle to battle as necessary, switching between Lavalic from the right positions, finishing them off. The only problem was Treejuller itself. The gigantic humanoid smashed its meteoric fists at the 3 players designated to figure out its attack pattern. Kirito was speedy enough to dodge them by a hair. Klein used a hit-and-retreat tactic, but Striker had used up nearly a third of his potions. The devastating blows obliterated a quarter of HP upon impact, and on each hit, the force blew him back either into the pool or into the horde. And even then, Asuna made sure that unnecessary damage was not experienced. If he fell towards the pool, she would direct the nearest tank to extend his shield to assist in a landing, while a second forward would take over, and unleash a sword skill on any rising skull. If striker was about to land in the midst of a skirmish, the number of forwards in that area would double, erasing any remaining Lavalic, before catching him as he landed. Kiba's impression of the player he'd saved some time back was that he was courageous, but the kind that was also foolish. He didn't have a clear idea when to fall back, and only understood attacking. Asuna did not show any frustration at his repetitive and risky mistakes, and instead spent all her focus on keeping every last player alive. Every third pattern repeat, 3 fists smashed here and there, the boss would unleash a fiery breath that spread in a massive arc, easily covering most of the area in front of it. Either Asuna would jump from raised shield to raised shield, intercepting it before it struck, or all of the players would rush into 2 different groups, with tanks interspersed among them raising their shields above their heads or in front, taking the brunt of the attack. As it passed, potions were distributed immediately, and the assault began once more. All this happened in front of the boss. On the other side of the field, one player's strength, synchronized with the happenings of the front, kept the boss occupied. Kirito fought like a machine of destruction, sword in hand. He leaped between stepping stones, jumping away from attacks made by Trijitter and at the same time, leaving long gashes on its back. As the boss flinched, he landed, took a position, and unleashed the strongest sword skill in his arsenal. The Queen's Knight sword at his right side glowed a mix of gold and blue, and then slashed vertically upwards, knocking back the boss's flailing right arm, followed by a powerful downward slash that left a massive cut on the arm. Sword now at his left, he jumped forwards, swinging it horizontally, with his arm pulled back so that the tip made a thin, but critically deep cut on the back of the boss. Having twisted his body to the right, he stabbed his sword diagonally to the left, spinning back to the left, and scooping out a large chunk of virtual flesh that dissipated as it left the body. As he landed, not breaking his stance, on a stepping stone that surfaced from time to time behind the boss, he unleashed his final hit, an overwhelmingly fast and strong horizontal slash with a large range, leaving another massive cut that dug deep into Trijitter's back. One-handed sword 5-hit skill, Royal Annihilator. The boss roared, and swung its left arm back to blow away the frozen Kirito, and was intercepted by Klein, the curved sword-wielding guild leader of Furinc Kazan. One of the scant few guilds that had been made, struck the oncoming fist vertically up, diverting the attack. As Kirito recovered from the skill lag, Klein took the forward position, striking here and there and keeping the boss busy, while at the same time, forwards on the other side took the chance to heal. This repeated 3 times. The first 5 or so pattern repeats, the players had played it safe, sizing up the threat levels. That was when Asuna began to execute her tactics, and the players began to have the upper hand. Back to the present, Kiba was powering through the Lavalic with relative ease. They were being mowed down, not given a chance to deal significant damage. Agil threw his axe at the boss as Kirito jumped back to avoid a strike-spinning chopper, long-ranged axe skill. Klein had moved positions to the front side of the battlefield, and the other players at the back were having a relatively easy time fighting off the few Lavalic that came their way. The one disadvantage of the minion mobs on this floor were that they had very large numbers. That was the sole reason that more forwards could not focus on the boss itself. Asuna moved through the remaining Lavalic at high speeds, her rapier flashing as it struck them at their critical points, the back of their necks, and soon, the only ones left were the ones trying to get out from the lava pool. At one point, however, the Lavalic stopped spawning. Asuna noticed and immediately shouted, "Fall back, regroup at a distance in front of the boss." Kiba heeded her instructions, like all others, and immediately moved away from the pool. As the remaining players gathered into a quickly thought-out formation, the noise died away. All that remained was the stationary boss and the tense, alert players. "Seriously, what's going on?" Kirito said. "We're not attacking. The boss isn't attacking. How the heck are we at a stalemate?" "Stay on guard, Kirito-kun," Asuna said. "We did just deplete half of its HP, but it hasn't reached the 3rd bar yet. That's when a pattern changes, if at all," Klein said. "Even so, we need to be careful. We don't know what other surprises this floor might come up with." At the very instant she said that, the pool exploded, something flew into the air, and landed with a resounding noise in front. It was a lavalic, but it was different. The skull wasn't flaming, and instead it wore a horned helmet. The arms were now made of bones twice the thickness. The body was a shade darker, and along with a properly shaped stone sword, it also had a spiked stone shield. Its overall build was also a fraction larger. The name Lavalic Sentinel appeared in Kiba's vision. This one made a grating shriek that sawed at Kiba's eardrums. "God, that's an awful noise," Kirito said. "Asuna-san, I can take this one," Kiba said. All eyes turned to him, as at the same time the boss also roared. "Are you out of your mind?" Asuna demanded. "There's only one, which means it could be ridiculously strong. It would be safer if 3 or 4 people attacked it together." "We don't have time to discuss this, Asuna-san," Kiba replied, sheathing his sword and moving into a position. "We can win this. If I deal with the sentinel, the rest of you can make short work of the boss." "Kiba-kun, just wait 1 minute. I have to show off sometimes too, don't I?" Kiba said, smiling. Without waiting for a response, he made his move. The weapon he got from the NPC Thanran was, by classification, just any other one-handed sword. What set it apart, however, were 4 things. The first was its distinctive ability to be trained. It couldn't be enhanced like an ordinary weapon, but instead it could be trained, leveled up like a player could. The second was its sheath, which also materialized when the sword was equipped. The sheath was irregular because it couldn't be attached to a belt or the back or anywhere. This means that unless the user wanted to drop it, he had to keep his left hand occupied at all times. Kiba had dropped it every now and then in the battle, but otherwise he used it as a makeshift shield, for which, it turns out, it was also designed. Having a high durability, the Lavalic Sentinel put its right foot back, and bringing its shield up to just below its neck, it drew the sword back, preparing to charge. Kiba, holding the sheathed sword in both hands, had slowly brought it to his left side, pointing backwards as if he was preparing to slash at something in front of him. "I know I shouldn't still want to attack things myself and still try to train while I am trapped here." The sheath began to glow a deep red, and tiny sparks shot out of the opening at the hilt. "But I can't always choose the easy fights either. I need to fight on my own anyway. I need to leave this world having become stronger than I was before." The sentinel began to charge and Kiba swung his sword clockwise with tremendous speed. With a muffled boom, the sheath flew at high speed towards the sentinel and slammed into its shield, blasting it off its feet and throwing it back 4 feet. The third unique aspect of the sword was its unique sword skills, a set of skills performable only by that weapon alone. Iron Missile was one such skill. The sheath fired with high speed, which would take out quite a lot of monsters at close range. The cost of this special set of skills, however, was that instead of causing a lag after using them, it took away 10% of the user's HP. It would not normally sound like much, but in a death game like SAO, it was a huge amount. Kiba's HP once again hit the yellow zone, but this time he did not stop to heal. "Get the boss!" he shouted, and dashed towards the sentinel. To his surprise, the sentinel was already standing and prepared to strike. "Damn Kaob!" Using an entire floor of monsters with low recovery and HP, just to ambush us at the end with something the exact opposite. There was no time to change his decision anymore. The Lavalic Sentinel was already in his range, and consequently, he in its range, and had raised its sword, poised to attack. The next second Kiba raised his own sword to meet the falling blow. A resounding clang echoed, and the 2 blades met. Kiba's blade flat first and the sentinel's with the edge, striking the edge of Kiba's own blade. At such a position, the sentinel's stone sword should have slid off of Kiba's, possibly chopping his arm off. However, somehow the blade caught. The sentinel croaked gratingly, still pushing down, and Kiba smiled. The fourth unique aspect of the sword was its shape, Crooked Ruin, a sword with a blade bent like a lightning bolt. The blade was black, edged with a dark red, and it angled sharply 7 times along its length as it gradually thinned towards the tip, and was shaped so that it could make the opponent's weapon catch, leading to an advantage. Kiba switched to a right-handed backhand grip, and moved forward, left shoulder first. The blade angled back, and the sentinel's sword slid off, the force of its push making it stumble forward. In the same instant, Kiba slashed counterclockwise, cutting through the side of the neck, and the sentinel spun away from him. The crooked tip had caught on the bone of the spine and inflicted critical damage. Divert slash was another exclusive skill, catching the opponent's blade, manipulating it to make the opponent stumble and striking them with a backhand slash. Kiba eyed his HP. 38%. He moved back from the sentinel, and took out a potion. While looking at its HP, it was only half depleted, even with the critical hit. Damn, that was my last potion. Kiba had not stocked up on too many potions. To be most accurate, he had only kept 3, deciding he would not need any more. All of them healed a maximum of 50% of his HP, and they were all heal overtime potions. The sentinel was getting ready to attack again. Kiba noticed the sheath of his sword lying near his feet, and picked it up with his left hand. The next strike would be the finisher. Iron Missile had high power, and if dealt from close range at a critical point, it would certainly kill even the sentinel. But first, he needed an opening, and he also noticed immediately that after hitting the yellow zone, it had gotten faster. It had also thrown away its shield. As Kiba got back into position, it charged, making a horizontal slash. Divert slash would not work in this case. Kiba had no choice but to try and block it. The instant he felt the impact, he realized that blocking was a bad idea. Without divert slash, Kiba would have to rely on his in-game defense, if he wanted to block, and he remembered a bit too late that he had given up on training that stat. The massive force blew Kiba away, straight at the walls of the spire. He hit it with a resounding thud, and watched his HP drop to a very small red. Still in the process of healing, one did not feel pain on Aincrad, but forces and impacts could definitely be felt. To be dealt a strong blow and feeling only the force and not the pain was a somewhat odd experience. Needless to say, the blow had left Kiba feeling as though he was winded. His real body, of course, had suffered no such thing, but in the virtual Aincrad, he was breathing hard. Watching the sentinel prepare for another attack, he hurriedly got to his feet. He glanced behind him and saw the long drop down into the lava river, which, Kiba realized, might really damage this time since it could count as outside the inner area during a boss battle, and understood how close he had come to dying himself. However, he also got an idea. His HP had stopped healing at around 18%, which stated the terrifying level of damage the attack had dealt. He could not afford to use another one of Crooked Ruin's exclusive skills. Other skills weren't strong enough, since he had not trained them, and they also had lag which would be fatal in the current situation. There might, however, be a way to make the sentinel kill itself. Not moving away from the edge of the spire, he slammed the hilt of his sword into the broken walls. Luckily, and somewhat to his expectations, they were no longer immortal objects. This meant they could be broken. Once again, Kiba was astonished by the lethality of the 11th floor. However, he had no time to ponder that. He slammed his sword continuously into the wall, while keeping his eyes on the sentinel. Too early, it charged. Time slowed. The sentinel was about 15 inches away from him. At the completely last instant, Kiba jumped to the left and spun, slamming the sheath into the lavalic sentinel's back. It crashed through the weakened, crumbling walls and fell, shrieking in its grated voice, into the lava pool below. Kiba almost didn't see the blue light that occurred as it shattered upon smashing into a piece of debris on the river. Right afterwards, a window opened in his vision. Level up, it proclaimed. His base HP increased, and his stats gained a few points. The sounds of battling and the roaring of Trigeter had persisted throughout Kiba's fight. He closed the window, and began to turn back to the battle. And at that moment, it happened. Kirito-kun. Chapter 9, Floor 11 Part 6. The duel on the spire. The sounds of battling and the roaring of Trigeter had persisted throughout Kiba's fight. He closed the window, and began to turn back to the battle. And at that moment, it happened. Kirito-kun. Kiba looked over instantly towards the sound of that voice, and following Asuda's line of sight he saw Trigeter raising his fist out of one part of the pool. We found out something that happened to all the 10,000 players who entered, both human and non-human. Unyai-sama, could you please answer directly? Raya said, if it's a way to get my servant and all others out, then I need to know right now. Unfortunately, it's not that, Surge said. Actually, It would be more accurate to say something's happened. Issei sighed. The first thing we noticed was that their life force was being gradually drained. That declaration seemed to stop time for Ryaz. Wait. You mean they're slowly dying? That no matter what they do, they're all still going to die? It's like this. You know how every being draws their energy for doing things from their life force, correct? Demonic power, magic and the like. Yes, but, and provided you don't use too much Atigo, it can heal back to normal, so your lifespan isn't shortened. What are you trying to say? Basically, that device is doing more than keeping them trapped. It is slowly absorbing their life force energy, just enough for it to not shorten their lifespans, and slowly enough so that they have time to recover. But, why? Akano asked. Have you figured out why? And where is all that energy going? It simply vanished. Ajika thinks it's all going into the dimensional gap, but we don't know for sure. After saying this, Surge stopped for a while. It's unbelievable. Really, he remarked. A simple game is causing this much chaos everywhere. Aincrad, Olympus, and others are giving the devil higher-ups a lot of misery over this. Ajika can't move at all. The higher-ups have shut down every one of his laboratories except one. He isn't even allowed to try and help fix this mess. And when the fact about the 100 other prisoners got leaked today, the situation has only gotten worse. Ryaz felt nothing but absolute hatred and anger towards the one single person who had caused all this. Issei, she said, none of this is helping us free Yato and the other prisoners. Surge grimaced. That's true. I wish it was otherwise, but Kayaba Kihiko has covered all possible loopholes regarding that. Surge-sama, Akano spoke up. You said that there was more than one thing that happened. What are the others? The other effect is something which we still don't know. That device, the nerve gear, is changing all the players somehow. What do you mean? Are they all being turned into devils? Ryaz asked. No, that's not it. Their base being is staying the same, but it seems as though all of them are getting something added to that. We don't know what it is, except for the fact that we have no idea what it could be. It was then that the Mao suddenly stopped. Oh yes, I just remembered why I came here. Ryaz, he said. She looked up, surprised to see the light-pleased glint in his eyes. What is it? We may not have found a way to get Yato-kun out of the game, he said, a small smile slowly forming, but we have found a way to send him a message. Kiba didn't wait for Asuna to say anything before launching his attack. Even I, a beta tester, was astonished at the ridiculous sword skill that he executed, and amazed by its immense power. I recalled Thanrin, who had done almost the same thing during our battle with him. That time, however, he was moving too fast for me to see the sword hidden within the sheath. This time, however, I saw the lightning bolt-shaped black blade, and I felt a pang of envy. I really should have kicked him out of that cavern and gotten that sword myself. I didn't have time to entertain those thoughts. Kiba yelled at us to attack the boss and went off on his own towards the Lavalic Sentinel, and I could see that Asuna also realized that she didn't have the time to waste trying to convince him otherwise. Tanks moved to the front, spear users line up behind them, Asuna directed, and all players followed her commands. Kirito-kun, you and 3 others circle the boss. You take the initiative. Klein-san as your backup. Agil-san, head to the front as well, along with Striker-san. The others, form up around the pool and attack when the boss's arms get near. Time to end it, I thought. I dashed ahead of all the others and jumped right at the boss. Trigander the Volcano Lord shared the common characteristic of most, if not all monsters of Ragnarok Isle, ridiculously high attack power, and low HP and defense to compensate for it. As a result, this was turning out to be one of our shortest battles yet. I didn't want to risk any more time here, so I decided to go all out. Without hesitating, the instant I neared the boss, I activated vertical square. 4 powerful slashes cut away at the massive humanoid, and the HP reached the final bar. And only then did I realize something I should have realized earlier. When a boss reaches its final HP bar, its attack pattern changes, occasionally beginning with a powerful wide area attack. Trigander roared, and the fist that flew at me this time was much faster. I was frozen and I couldn't dodge. The instant I landed on a piece of debris after completing the sword skill, It smashed down at me mercilessly. Asuna could not believe what had just happened. Kirito had launched the first hit on Trigeter, bringing it down to the final HP bar, and then the boss had battered him straight into the pool. At that moment, his name also disappeared from her party list. Every player was stock still, disbelieving. Of all the people gathered here, no one seemed to believe that it would be their undoubtedly strongest player who had fallen first. Asuna heard running steps, and realized that Kiba was coming over to them. Trigeter, however, was not going to give them time to regroup. The giant boss thrust a hand into the pool and lifted up a glowing mass of lava. Pulling its arm back, it threw it directly upwards. "Move!" a part of Asuna screamed at her, as she watched the lava fly upwards with impossible speed, blasting away part of the cavern ceiling. Coming to her senses, Asuna quickly came to realize what was going to happen. Tanks, shields upwards, forwards and spear users, keep your eyes above and get ready to invade. The broken rocks fell like rain upon the players. 45 players shouted and moved rapidly, dodging the falling meteors. Tanks buckled under the impact and fell to their knees. Players with stronger offensive power tried to strike the falling boulders away. Some succeeded, others were struck. There was a scream, followed by another. Asuna glanced around as she dodged another boulder, and saw two avatars shatter under fallen rocks. "No, no, no," she heard a yell from near the boss, and saw a striker running towards the boss, weaving through the rocks and suffering glancing blows from them. "Get away, you idiot!" she screamed. Striker didn't hear her, and if he did, decided against it. "Eat this, you bastard!" he yelled, sword held above his head as he tried to activate Avalanche, two-handed sword skill. Trigeter roared, and swung an arm at a rapid speed, blowing Striker clear off the tower. His screams faded as he fell further down. Trigeter was not done. As the last of the rocks fell, the boss inhaled. Asuna threw away all thoughts of safety. Not this time. Weaving aside from a final boulder, she moved. Time slowed, and her vision seemed to tunnel. She saw Trigeter about to release its breath and in an instant, was there in front of it. In a secluded hospital, a certain room was momentarily lit in blue flickering light. The rapier drew back and shone bright yellow, and to Kiba's eyes, the blade disappeared. He hadn't seen Asuna move. 1 second she was dodging a rock, the next second she was right at the neck of the boss. Yellow waves spread from the area around Trigeter's neck, one upwards and one downwards. An instant before each, the boss's HP dropped. It dropped once more sharply before a yellow ray pierced through its neck, and only then did Asuna's rapier reappear, embedded in Trigeter's throat. The boss roared in pain and brought its hands to its neck as Asuna jumped back, unarmed. The HP bar pulsed red momentarily at intervals, indicating a damage over time effect. "Asuna-san," Kiba called out, "get behind the others, we'll deal with the rest." "I can't do that," she yelled back stubbornly. "I have to stay on the front as well." "You're unarmed," Klein yelled. "Stay back and let us handle this. You can direct us from the back. Without your sword, you'll die if you go too close to the boss." Asuna bit her lip and moved back, as Klein ran to the edge of the pool. His eyes were teary, and he had a furious expression on him. Kiba knew why. Kirito's HP bar and name had vanished from the corner of his vision where all the party members were listed. Kiba still could not believe that one of the two players possibly stronger than him were the first to go down. "Damn it, Kirito," Klein said, his sword shaking. "You just had to go and do that, didn't you?" Trigeter roared and, giving up on dislodging the rapier, focused on Klein instead. Klein moved his left leg back and brought the curved sword to his left. Kiba was struck by a sense of familiarity. "I've seen that position before." "I know I have." Trigeter roared and brought its fist down again, flames flickering between its teeth. Klein jumped just in time, landed on its arm, and ran straight up it. "Hey, snakehead!" Klein shouted at the boss, jumping right in front of its face. "Don't look down on me." The blade glinted and slashed diagonally at a high speed, leaving a gash on its snout. Kiba and Asuna were probably the only ones who saw what happened next. At the peak of the slash, Klein let go of the sword, and reversed his grip. The point of the sword cut straight through Trigeter's eye, and he came back to his starting position. Kiba realized then why the initial motion was familiar. In fact, he had seen it performed many, many times. A sword in its sheath, drawn out, struck with, and returned to the sheath in the same motion. Klein had used a very different version of it, but the idea was no doubt the same. Ai, Kiba realized, astonished, that was a variation of Ai. He also realized that Klein had not used any sword skill. Landing onto a piece of debris in front of the boss, Klein immediately jumped away. Dreigitor, having received a critical hit to the eye, had yellow HP remaining. 2 more attacks. Asuna shouted from the rear. 2 more sword skills will finish it off. Kiba eyed his HP. 18%. He could use his last special skill and possibly finish off the boss. However, Dreigitor once again took a breath, ignoring the rapier, which continued to exert its dot effect. It glared down at the players with its one remaining eye. Move to the sides, Asuna yelled, and Dreigitor blew fire once more. This time, however, it was different. Unlike the wide wave of fire from before, this was a concentrated beam, a dark orange flamethrower that incinerated the center column. 3 players were caught in its path, and were killed almost instantly. Tanks near the blast had their shields lose their durability and shatter. Kiba, who had just barely avoided the flame, noticed cracks appearing in his armor. What's happening? Ryaz cried. The connection is going shaky. An assistant devil said, we might not be able to send the message at this rate. Ryaz-sama, please hurry. The annihilating fire dissipated and Dreigitor roared again. Kiba saw his HP changed from 18% to 16%. Crap, this is getting too close. Get ready, it's happening again. Agil shouted from the front, raising his axe and preparing to throw it. I won't let you. Asuna yelled and ignoring her safety, dashed forward, preparing to lunge for her rapier. It was nowhere near the speed of before. Kiba knew it was suicide. Right then, the impossible happened. Something appeared at the edge of his vision, and he saw Klein. Asuna and Agil's eyes widened at the same time. There was a splash of lava from behind the boss, and a certain black-clothed swordsman jumped out, over its head, and dealt a spinning slash that blinded its other eye. Kirito-kun? Asuna cried, immensely surprised. Kiba noticed the boss flinch, bringing its arms up to its face, and knew this was his only chance. He ran, not as fast as he had ever gone, but much harder than he had ever ran. Reaching the boss, he threw the sheath to the side and jumped, landing on the boss's front and pushing off upward and taking another jump off its arm, landing on the head. Holding Crooked Ruin in both hands, he drew it back and the blade began to spin. A red-black light, reminiscent of his master's power of destruction, swirled around it, flecked with orange sparks. Third and final special skill of Crooked Ruin, Jagged Drill, a high-power close-range attack whose usage cost was 15% of the user's HP. The blade spun, the light spinning in a tornado, and Kiba thrust it straight into Dreigitor's skull. There was no roar, no flailing of anguish. The HP bar dropped straight to 0, and the boss simply stopped moving, and began to fall forward as the lava in the pool slowly solidified around it. Kiba leaped away just in time and landed, stumbling, on the soft rock that once made up the pool. Dreigitor fell with a crash, and then shattered into polygons. Kiba glanced at his HP. 1%. All the exhaustion finally got to him as he fell onto the ground and blacked out. Inside a hidden facility, Ryaz Greamery let out a sigh of relief. In the last 15 seconds, her servant's heartbeat had skyrocketed and the connection they had made for sending a message had shook violently. Now, however, his pulse was slowing back down to normal. Is he alright? She asked. He was probably in a tough battle, just about no, and seeing as he's still alive and calming down, I'm guessing he won, Serge said. Ryaz smiled. The connection looks fine too. What do you think, Ajika? Serge continued, speaking to the communication circle near him. It seems fine to me, though I can't really tell from all the way here. My apologies, Serge. Don't worry about it, you can't help it. Well, Ryaz, Serge said, you can relax now. Take your time with the message. It might turn out to be one time only, but we can wait till you know what you want to say. Understood. Thank you, Onyai-sama, and Ajika-sama. Oh, no need to thank me, princess. I'm happy enough to have been able to do something to help. Kiba woke to find Asuna and Kirito looking at him. What the hell was that last move? Were the first words out of Kirito's mouth. Asuna gave an exasperated sigh, and said, "Really? That's the first thing you ask him?" Kiba groaned, and sat up. "How long was I out?" he asked. "About half a minute," Kirito said. "You also got the last attack bonus of the boss." "Now is not the time, Kirito-kun," Asuna said. Kiba got up, and noticed all the other players looking at him. "Oh yeah," Kirito said, "I forgot to mention that you became famous over Blackout." "Hey, Kirito," Klein said, before crushing Kirito in a bear hug. "Don't go and scare us like that." Asuna, too, turned towards him. "Klein-san, I'd like to speak to Kirito-kun." "Ah, okay," he said, moving away. Kirito turned to face Asuna, who met his gaze with an impassive stare. She took a breath. "What the hell were you thinking, you reckless idiot?" "Wait, you actually are mad?" Kirito tried to move away, but Asuna grabbed his collar. "Explain." "Now," she said, teeth gritted. "Well, you see, once the boss turned its back, I jumped out, used its back as a stepping stone and went over its head before I attacked it." Kirito-kun, Asuna said cheerfully, "would that happen to be what I just asked you about, and number?" "Okay then. Now answer my question." Well, you know how you told us yesterday to prepare for the boss battle? I kinda had a hunch, so I went down to the nearest lava river to experiment. It should not have been possible in a place like Ragnarok Isle, but Kiba could have sworn he felt the temperature drop by about 20 degrees. "Experiment?" Asuna asked quietly. "Hey, I didn't do anything too dangerous. I just dipped my arm into the river and figured out the rate at which my HP dropped. After that." "You know the apothecary on the 7th floor?" She nodded silently. "I tried to make potions there with the same healing rate to counter the effects of the lava. It wasn't easy, and took me a lot of hunting to find the ingredients, but I finally managed to make a whole batch. I wasn't intending to use it for that purpose actually, it just came to me the minute I went under, so that's alright, isn't it?" Kirito said, laughing nervously. "What about your name disappearing from the party list?" "Oh, that. Well, I figured that since the pool was supposed to be specifically for killing anyone unwary of it and that it was pretty deep, it sort of counted as outside the boss room area." "Sort of. I'm taking a wild guess here. Also, I don't think the boss was programmed to attack players within the lava, so I was safe there as long as I kept chugging down potions. Turns out I miscalculated just a bit and had to use my entire batch to stay alive. But hey, I made it out, right?" Yes you did," Asuna replied, while opening her menu. Kirito's confusion mirrored Kiba's own as Asuna selected an option. A small window appeared in front of Kirito. "Hey, Asuna, isn't this?" She grabbed his wrist and made him touch the accept button. A confirmation beep rang out and Kirito turned a questioning gaze to her dash and got slugged in the face by Asuna's fist. He fell down onto the ground with the loud thud and a message appeared over their heads. "Early attack. Match forfeited." "Ow," Kirito said, out of reflex. "You're lucky that didn't actually hurt," Asuna said icily. "I'll remember not to ever make her angry," Kiba noted mentally. "Anyways, Kirito," Klein spoke up, smirking, "me and the others will go on and open up the next floor. And I guess that Kansai idiot has something to thank you for now, doesn't he?" He continued, turning to look at the player who was, for the entire duration of the battle, out of the danger area. Kibao clicked his tongue and looked away. Excuse me, Asuna-sama?" A voice spoke up. All eyes turned to a frail-looking tank, who did not seem to fit in his armor. He faltered, and then spoke up. "I was thinking, we just cleared a pretty dangerous floor, so, is it okay if we take the next couple of days easy?" "Alright, everyone take a couple of days off, and do whatever you feel like, on one condition, don't be an idiot like him over there and go die. Got that?" "Yes," almost all players chorused. "Phew, guess I can finally go and look up that martial arts skill that dude on the 9th floor talked about." "Martial arts skill?" "Yeah, apparently it's somewhere near the edges of Rebus." "Great, let's go grab that skill." A conversation was carried out among players near the back, and Kiba saw Kirito frown upon hearing them. Kirito then opened his window and began typing out a message to someone. 37 players walked up the makeshift staircase formed by the fallen rock, while Kiba, Kirito and Asuna stayed behind. Some things were nagging Kiba and he decided to ask the two of them. "Asuna-san," he began, "when I blacked out my HP was at the utmost low. How is it?" Kiba said, eyeing his full HP bar, "that it's back to maximum in such a short time?" "Oh, I used a heal crystal on you." "Wait, what?" Kirito said, having finished typing out and sending the message. "You had a heal crystal? Since when? And they're like, immensely rare." "I didn't waste my day of preparation on stupidity." Kirito grimaced at that. "Yeah, you're never letting this one go." "One more thing," Kiba said, "the thing you sent to Kirito-kun. What was that?" "That? Oh, you don't know about the dueling system, do you?" Kirito said. "Dueling system? Normally, if you attack a player, your green cursor changes to orange, indicating that you were a criminal. However, if you want to test your skills against a player, you can challenge them to a duel." Kiba felt that this may have been what he needed right now. "This duel, does it only end when the other player's HP hits 0, and does the player die in that case?" "Well, there are 3 types of duels. First strike, which depends on who lands the first clean hit, half HP depletion, which ends when one player's HP hits the yellow zone, or full HP depletion, which ends when one player hits 0, and I guess still dies. Nobody wants to bet on the possibility that they won't, and as a result, no one goes with the third type. Even the second type can be risky if one player grossly overpowers the other. You don't stop getting damage once your HP hits half, and the duel only ends when the damage infliction is complete. It's entirely likely that a player can suffer a strong enough hit to die in even this kind of duel. Of course, that risk exists in first strike mode too, but a much smaller risk." Kiba knew instantly that yes, this was what he needed. He turned to Kirito with a serious expression, and said, "Then, Kirito-kun, might I challenge you to a first strike duel?" Asuna stopped. "Eh? Hey, what are you saying? You just finished a boss battle. You've got to be exhausted." "Asuna, wait," Kirito interrupted, meeting Kiba's gaze. "I think he really wants to do this." "Wait, why though?" "I'm not entirely sure myself," Kiba said with a smile, "but perhaps I just want to see which one of us is stronger." "Alright, I'll do it, right here then." "Yes, also, can I request a spar without the use of any sword skills?" Kirito laughed. "You don't make it easy, do you?" "Alright, send the request." Kiba nodded, and opened his window. Finding the duel option, he selected challenge, and chose Kirito's cursor through the window in front of him. A window opened in front of Kirito, and he chose the accept button, and then selected first strike from the options that came up. Asuna moved to the side, shaking her head and muttering "boys." And Kirito and Kiba moved backwards, creating some distance. The countdown at the top of Kiba's vision paced towards 0 as he and Kirito took up their respective positions. Kirito put his left leg forward about half a body length and held a sword at his right, tip nearly touching the ground. Kiba moved his left leg back and held his sword upwards in front of him at a slight angle. "From what I surmised, first strike rules state that the first one to land a clean hit wins. Kirito-kun, that stance leaves him open on his left." The timer counted down the seconds as both Kiba and Kirito tensed themselves. 3, 2, 1, start. Kirito charged, a hurricane of black, as he drew the sword back, preparing to thrust it forward. Kiba parried the blow to his left, then swung crooked ruin up towards Kirito's neck. With an attack like this, he'll have to move back to dodge it. That'll leave him completely open, and a single stab will do the trick. However, Kirito betrayed his expectations, making no move to dodge it. He swung the sword that was at Kiba's side inwards towards his gut, forcing Kiba to hurriedly draw his sword back, and barely block the strike with a pommel. Taking his chance, Kirito jumped back immediately. Kiba, for one, was astounded. It was a completely unorthodox move Kirito had pulled. Instead of trying to dodge the blow, he decided to trust in his own striking speed to win. He had no way of knowing who was the faster of the two, so Kiba couldn't figure out why he had done such a risky move. No, he realized, he knew that if he dodged, it would have been a certain loss for him. and so he decided to gamble on the chance that he could get in a hit first. He wasn't being confident of his own speed, he was being analytical of mine. The two of them circled, keeping their distance, Kirito this time in a defensive stance. Kiba took the initiative and struck at high speed, a feint towards his left, and then quickly pull away and jab at his right. Seeing the oncoming strike to his left, Kirito moved his sword, and ignoring the feint, blocked the attack from the right. Kiba was momentarily stunned, and Kirito did not let that chance fly by, violently clanging the Queen's Knight sword off of Crooked Ruin and aimed for Kiba's chest. Kiba spun clockwise on a dime, the downward slanting slash grazing off his cheek, cutting away a tiny fragment of his HP, and made a spinning slash towards Kirito in the same motion, almost as if he bounced the sword off the air. Kirito sharply redirected his blade to meet Kiba's, and the blade caught on the angular black edge. The two of them remained at a steady impasse. Marvelous reaction speed, Kirito-kun, Kiba said, grinning. Is this what gaming helps you attain? Things you control using a keyboard and things you use your own hands for are different, though it probably is due to me lifelessly spending my years on a PC, he replied, smirking. There was a clang as Kirito moved his sword back a fraction and then slammed it onto Crooked Ruin, and the two of them jumped back. This time, they both attacked at the same time. An overhead diagonal slash down to the left was blocked by a timed horizontal slash from Kirito. Kiba took a step back, and then forward, thrusting out the tip. Kirito switched the sword to his left hand and spun anti-clockwise, parrying Kiba's strike and at the same time veering in towards his left. Kiba used the momentum of Kirito's counter to spin clockwise himself, meeting Kirito's spinning slash with a spinning slash of his own. Once again Kirito's blade caught, but this time he was ready. He slid the blade to the side intentionally, falling into the path of Crooked Ruin, taking Kiba by surprise once again, and then ducked right below the sword, attacking Kiba with a backhand blow. Once again, Kiba had to guard with the pommel. A moment after the impact they both took their distance once again. The two of them met each other's steady gazes, and they both took an attacking stance. Kiba knew that this would be the last attack. They counted down the seconds mentally, each looking for a slight opening in the other. Kiba noticed Kirito twitch slightly and jumped forward, swinging his sword in a wide arc from the left. Kirito drew his sword back and struck forward. The two strikes did not meet. Kiba felt his blade cut cleanly at Kirito's chest while he felt an impact upon his gut at the same time. Both of them stood still, not moving an inch from their positions. A window opened above their heads and they both glanced up. Draw. Kiba relaxed and moved his sword back as Kirito did the same. Phew, that was tough, Kirito said, grinning. You've got a lot more than you show, don't you? I could say the same for you, Kirito-kun. Kiba smiled back. Ahem. Asuna broke in. Now that you two are done, can we move to the next floor? I don't want to stay here any longer. That annoying smell of sulfur is coming back. Kirito chuckled. Always the princess, aren't you? Shut up. Kiba glanced around, and found his sheath. As he picked it up and sheathed his sword, Asuna asked him, Kiba-kun, are you going to be coming with us, or do you wish to go by yourself? Kiba considered it for a while. It did not take him long to find an answer. I'll tag along with you too. Be somewhere on Aincrad. One person looked at a screen in the air. He looked at the duel between a black-clothed swordsman and a red-armored swordsman with interest and mild surprise in his eyes. Interesting, he muttered. Very interesting. He brought up another window and dabbled in something. Perhaps I was too hasty in deciding to give him that now. He finished modifying something, and clicked confirm. A message box appeared in front of the window. Reaction time measurement date shifted to January 2024. Dual blade skill grand date shifted to January 2024. After all, he said, turning to another window, showing two players, a male and a female sitting at the bank of a raging river. We already have one unique skill running around. Really? I didn't expect you to give that away so early in the game. Perhaps I really should have made it a part of the NPC's programming. I separated from Asuna and Kiba once we reached the inner area, and went off to train on my own. Can't help the fact that I'm a training nut, can I? Right before I left the area, though, I received a message. Took you long enough, I muttered, opening it. Talk about timing. Kip, sending a message right when I'm trying to survive being smashed against boulders by a river. And yeah, I got him out, and he's almost a different person. I typed out a reply, don't ever come to the 11th floor, by the way, or you're gonna wish you did get smashed. The reply this time was pretty fast. She wasn't doing anything right now, was she? I know, you frontliners were pretty clear on that fact when you opened it up. Be careful on the next few floors, okay? Same to you. And that is the end of the Floor 11 arc. I know the story is a very long one. Like I said at the beginning, please show the author support and comment if I should do more longer videos like this down below. This is Ultraverse What If signing off.